All right.
May I have your attention, please? The NAB show floor is now open. Have a great day and enjoy the show. Once again, the NAB show
And
floor is now open.
woo, it's my silent scream. All right, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me. Hello, those of you paying attention to us on Facebook Live. Great to see you here at day one of NAB. And I love the smell of NAB in the morning. There is a smell. Make no mistake about it. Thank you for joining me. My name is Jason Levine, Principal Worldwide Evangelist for Adobe Creative Cloud. And for the next 25 minutes or so, we're going to be talking to you about some of the latest innovations that have come to Creative Cloud. As of this past Wednesday, if you haven't noticed already, inside of your Creative Cloud desktop, you have new versions of Premiere Pro, After Effects, Audition, Character Animator, and Adobe Media Encoder. And I'm going to be talking about several of those with some of the features in them now. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and talk about Premiere. And one of the things that you're going to notice in this release is that it's really about efficiency, stability, and performance. And we've done a lot of features, a lot of things in here that are just going to make your work life, your production life, better and more efficient. And the first thing I'm going to show you is something called Freeform, which is a new way to organize and effectively storyboard and create your story in Premiere before it even hits the timeline. So if we take a look at this folder of content that we have here, incidentally, all of the content that we have here is from a short film called Century, provided to us by a filmmaker named Mike Burton. Here is the traditional list view, and we're all familiar with this, and of course you've got all of your metadata fields here, but this doesn't really help you tell a story, but this is how I actually work most of the time. I look at the clip names, I drag things in, and then I just start assembling in the timeline. Now, sometimes I'll move into the icon view, and what a lot of people don't realize is the icon view can in fact be used to do some basic storyboarding, but there's some limitations here. I mean, I can move clips around and reorder them, and then actually have it insert them in that specific order. But it's very linear, and there's no grouping, there's no sorting, so we wanted to give you more. We wanted to give you something a bit more freeform. And that is exactly what I'm going to show you here, which is a brand new view called the Freeform view. Let me go ahead and undock this panel. And the Freeform view is just that. It allows you to take your content and group it together however you'd like inside of this panel. As you hover over things, you still have your hover scrub capabilities. And you notice right here, your playhead. So you can do JKL. You can set your in and out points. You can, of course, resize individual clips or groups of clips as you group them together very, very easily, very, very efficiently. You can even drag things off screen, which really speaks to sort of not just a freeform, but actually like an artboard style view if you're familiar working in Photoshop or Illustrator. So this is a wonderful way to begin to organize your content very easily, very efficiently. I wanted to show you just a couple of the different ways that Mike kind of organized his content here. So again, you can see kind of very sort of linear layout here, simple, but by scene, organizing things by scene. Or if we take a look at this content here, where he sort of made, it almost looks like he's got this whole sort of, again, beginning, middle, and end, visual. It's easy to understand. Again, lots of options here. If you right-click inside of Freeform, you'll also see that you have the ability at any point in time to align back to a grid or to reset to the grid, where you can, in fact, traditionally, as you might have, organize visually your content based on any one of these metadata fields. So for me, typically I like to use name again, and it'll place everything back in name order. Now, as I just did that, I kind of lost my storyboard. But we thought about that. So what we allow you to do is to save your layouts and restore your layouts. So if I go back to Lesson Storyboard, there it is, exactly as we had it. Now, the really cool thing about this is that, again, you can take this content, order it the way you want, set your in and out points, which this particular content up at the top has, and then you can right-click here and choose New Sequence from Clip, and it automatically assembles that for you very easily. So this is a wonderful, fast, and efficient way to work. It's also worth pointing out that the saving of the layouts is per bin. So this is important to note, right? So it's per bin. So you can save any number of these. You can create new ones and have multiple ones inside the bin, but it's on a per bin basis. So this is, again, just a really cool way to organize things. Oh, and you also have the ability, of course, if you're like me and very OCD, by holding the Option key as you drag your content, you can snap everything together really easily. Again, if I wanted to make these bigger, kind of highlight all of these clips, know that I need to place them on later, I can drag all of this off screen. Again, this is where I'd like to use my global resizer here, and it really starts to feel like an artboard as you move around. You know, sometimes you might want to stack clips on top of one another, if that's the way you like to organize. You always have hover scrub capability. You always have the ability to set your in and outs, scrub, JKL, and play through them. And we think this is a huge efficiency maker for you and a new way to just sort of work through your footage and tell your story inside of Premiere Pro. Okay, so that's a little on the freeform bins. Now, we wanted to make it even easier for you when it comes to working with and modifying graphics. And many of you will know that over the last couple of versions, we've really enhanced the Essential Graphics panel. This is a panel that not only allows you to download motion graphics templates from Adobe Stock, and this little Adobe Stock button was added last year. We now have over 10 million 4K, Ultra HD, HD, and motion graphics templates available to you in Adobe Stock, and we thank all of you as contributors for making that number so high. So this is where you can design your titles, your credits, transitional elements, all on screen, on canvas. You don't have to go into that old school modal dialogue. You can do it right here. But what we started to hear from a lot of users was that, well, you know, if I want to modify something, or if I want to place it on screen, I mean, basically all we had were our safe margins. So, you know, maybe I want things to be directly in the center. And yes, we do have align and transform controls. And we did add some of the Photoshop-like functions where if you hold Shift, it will constrain to a vertical or horizontal plane. But it wasn't enough. You told us via user voice in the forums that, hey, we need guides. And more importantly, what we really need are shareable guides. Because I work in enterprise, and we have specific locations for our logo bugs, or for captions, or any number of things. This is what we actually want. Well, again, one of the things that we're very proud to say is that we are out there in the social world, we are listening, and most of the features that are getting added, particularly in this release, came from user requests. So now, if you go up to the View menu with the Program Monitor and Focus, you will see that we now have Show Rulers, and let's go ahead and Show Guides. And if we want to create a guide, it's as simple as dragging from the horizontal plane up here and placing it on screen just like that. Guides. Let's go ahead and clear those. What if we just want to add ones? You've got some guide options. We can change the color here. So let's maybe make this into kind of a purpley magenta, something like that. All right, you can change the orientation there. Let's go ahead and drag these out. You can have any number of guides. And we've even made it better because now as you click and move your text around, again, if you hold down the Command key, now you can snap to these guides. Also, much like Photoshop or InDesign or Illustrator, it'll snap to specific regions in your frame of view here. So lots more visual feedback for aligning your content. But as I mentioned, these are also authorable and shareable. So let's once again clear these and go into our Guide Templates view, where now you can see I have a whole series of guides that I've pre-created. And I've also shared across my post-production house, across my enterprise, so that everyone will ensure that all of their motion graphics are consistently in the right place. So for this particular short film, Century, he made us guides for his lower thirds. They always need to be over there. So once again, hold down the Command key, snap this right into place, wind it back. Okay, and it's perfectly along the plane where it's supposed to go. Very nice, all right? These are so flexible and so easy to work with. Now, as mentioned, you can have any number of guides here. So I can continue to pull out more. I can save and author more. And these are creating .guide files. Very small, very simple. They don't even get saved to Creative Cloud. They go right to wherever you want them to go, so they're very easy to share. Very easy to package up, very easy to move around, all right? So let's go ahead and clear these and import another one. For this, we've got some captions that were created, and I want to make sure that I'm putting them exactly where the director wanted them. And he's made me a caption guide. So under Guide Templates, I can go into Manage Guides. Let's go into Import here. Guides for import, and you can see these are my .guides files. And the one we want is Captions. Click Open, it gets added to the list. Let's go ahead and turn on our Captions guides. And now I can see that my captions are exactly where they're supposed to be. So such a welcomed addition to Premiere. Again, efficiency. That's really, if there's one takeaway from today, what is this latest version of Premiere Pro? It's going to make you more efficient. It's going to allow you to do things that you've been asking for and wanting for some time. Now, taking it a little step further in terms of the graphics themselves, we've added some additional new functions in the Essential Graphics panel to make your lives easier. One of those being, if you're authoring text, titles, lower thirds, is the ability to have multiple strokes. Now, I'm no designer, so you'll forgive my beautiful design capabilities here. But I'm going to start adding some strokes to our text. Let me go ahead and select one of these. I'll do Your Dreams Are. And I'm going to change the color on this. All right, we'll go into like an orange creamsicle color. Increase the stroke size. You see this a lot in different parts of the world where they use multiple strokes. Again, we've got a little plus button here. You can add any number of strokes that you want. Let's add a secondary one here. Okay, so very easily, right on canvas, right on screen. So cool, so easy. One of the other things you'll also notice is that we have a new mask with text function so that you can actually have video punch through the text. It'll build the mask for you, and all you have to do to enable that is to import a video file or any kind of background directly inside of the Essential Graphics panel as a new video layer. You don't have to do any masking. It automatically does it for you. What you also get here, let me go to the bottom layer, is the ability to create a responsive bounding box. So if you want a bounding box around your text that automatically reflows, previously we added responsive design pinning positioning, which allowed you to do that. This is great. It's still in there. So anything you can create, what you would do is you would type text, and then you would come over here, and then you would create presumably a rectangle or some other shape, and then you would pin it to the text so that as your text grew, the shape would grow. So many people were doing that. They were saying that's great, but that's a lot of steps just to get a bounding box that reflows. So now what you'll see is you have a new background box option here where we can set the color, set it something like this. We can increase the size. We can increase the opacity or decrease the opacity. And if we grab our text tool, it automatically grows with the text. Yes, see, clapping for such a simple thing because it was kind of confusing before, right? Still powerful, you can still do it. There are still many reasons why you would use all of the classic responsive design time and position options. This one, though, this is something that I always use with my limited design capabilities, and this just makes that process so much faster and more efficient. So we're really happy to bring that with you. Okay, last thing I'm going to show you in Premiere before we move on to After Effects, something that I think, oh, two more things actually, something I think you're going to be very excited to see. A lot of speed improvements and speed enhancements in Premiere. One of the features that really got an enormous speed increase. And those of you who've watched me on stage or on Facebook know that I don't say things I don't mean. So when I say enormous, that sounds like a strange word to lead on. This is an enormous change in the speed and processing of masking and tracking in Premiere Pro. It is wickedly fast, and it actually gets faster as you up the raster size. So in terms of like 100 times, 10x, 20x faster on 4K, 5K, 6K, 8K, this is really where you're going to see it. Here we've got some 4K content, and classically we've got in his, this was a short film, and he didn't get license from Strava here to show their logo. So we just need to blur that out. Simple stuff. Now you can use this for a number of different things. So here I've got a Gaussian blur. I'm going to take one of our mask tools like this, and let me just increase the size so I can do this a little bit more accurately. All right, and we'll create our quick little elliptical mask on our logo here, all right? Now, this process didn't take terribly long before, but it kind of chugged along. So we create our mask. Now, if you go into the tracker options, you're going to see that there's a preview button in there. By default, this is disabled because what we used to do is we would show you the path and the keyframe drawing as it was tracking. You can still turn that on. It's even faster, but when it's off, it is ridiculously fast. So let's go ahead and now just track forward. It's already done. Let me go ahead and increase our blurriness here. Let's zoom back out so it fits. And there we go. All right. Quickly mask and track, literally in a few seconds. All right. To do this same 48 frames before, it probably took 28 seconds. Now we did it in 3. So, roughly 7, 8 times faster, give or take, okay? And again, you'll see those speed increases even more so as you go up in size. So here's another one where we wanted to do a basic color correction on his face to kind of brighten up his face here, because it was a bit in shadow. Oh, whoops, sorry. All right. So same thing. We can select our mask. All right. Drag this, resize it. This is the equivalent of, yes, we could do an actual HSL secondary color correction here if we wanted. But, because this is really only confined to his face and because the skin tone in this case is affected in other regions, we might want to do that. This is an easier way. Come over here to basic correction, and let's just up the exposure just a little bit. All right, up the highlights too. Okay, let's go ahead and track it. Get rid of these keyframes that are already in there. Sorry, I'm just resize it one more time. Like this. All right, let's go ahead and track it. Does its thing. Boom, there we go. Play it back. Real easy. All right, before, darkened face. After, nice. Simple. Wickedly fast. All right? So the new masker and tracker, so much more efficient, so much faster. You're really going to see this in practice. All right, last thing I'm going to show you in Premiere before we bounce over to what you've been probably waiting for, which is content-aware fill in After Effects, is a brand new render and replace option. So as we move up in raster size, as we go from 4K now the standard to 5K, 6K, and 8K, I edit most of my things on a laptop. So yes, we have our proxy workflow. That makes it doable. Yes, we have fractional playback resolution, which again will just display fewer pixels on screen, but you can pause in full quality for color correction and things. Yes, that makes it more efficient too. But as you start adding effects, you're just adding an additional layer of weight, right? Especially in 4K, 6K, 8K. So with render and replace, that's always been great. You can just quickly render it out. But then if you wanted to say, if you had a bunch of effects on there and you wanted to edit them or modify them, you then had to go back to the original file, re-add those effects. It wasn't so easy. The render and replace basically destroyed your original clip. Or you just placed it on top, right? And it took a little longer, and it wasn't elegant. It wasn't delightful. It wasn't efficient. So what you can see on this clip is I've got some warp stabilizer and some Lumetri color. All right, so if we play this back, if I turn off warp, all right, and turn off Lumetri, so there's kind of the before, there's the after, right? Really nice. So now let's go to right-click, control-click, render and replace. And when I do that, what you will now see is that this is a familiar dialog if anyone's worked in our ingest proxy workflow before. But what you'll also notice is that you now have a checkbox here to include video effects. So I'll go ahead and click OK on this. It renders and replaces. And notice now the effects are still there, but they show up as rendered, okay? So now this is completely off the GPU, freeing up GPU for other effects, other real-time capabilities. But I want to make a change to the stabilizer, or I want to add another effect, or change Lumetri altogether. Right-click, restore unrendered, and there they are, back to their native state. Fully editable, fully modifiable. Yes! There's not usually this much clapping this early in the morning. Good on you. You're ready. Okay? There's lots more in Premiere, lots of new format support, lots of other tweaks under the hood, lots of things to make you more efficient. But we must now bounce over to After Effects to talk about really one of the things that has truly taken the post-production world by storm, dare I say. Now, I was fortunate enough to be able to showcase this still in very early alpha beta at MAX last year in Los Angeles in October. And 18 months ago, this was something out of the Adobe labs. This was just a dream. because what's actually in this shot is a car going alongside. Now, removing things from, video is not new, right? I mean, everyone's been doing this for a very long time, and most people ask Andrew Kramer, how would you probably do it? I don't know about him necessarily, but I would typically take something like this, export a frame sequence, go into Photoshop, and then use Content Aware or the patch tool or some other clone stamp, paint it all out, frame by frame, re-export those frames, import them as a frame sequence, good to go. Great. But that's at a time loss to you. So we wanted to make this easier. We wanted to bring the power of content-aware fill, the ability to analyze and see pixels before and after and around the content that you're trying to eliminate, and fill it in intelligently and do it right inside of After Effects. So I'm going to do that for you now. And we do this via 3 different methods. We've got object, surface, and edge blend, each one of them sort of conforming to a different need. So the first task involved is to add a mask. Effectively, you have to create a hole where you want it to fill in. And from there, you can use the classic After Effects tracker. By the way, in terms of making the mask, you can use the pen tool, you can use an elliptical mask, you can use the roto brush. Any way that you can poke a hole in this, you can do it. And then we track that mask. And then over here, you'll see that Content-Aware Fill now appears as a panel. It's in your tools. So we've got a little alpha expansion option here. We're going to use the object method. And let's go ahead and generate the fill layer. And now what this does is it's now going to analyze this, right? And it's going to look at all the pixels before and after. And it's going to figure out what it needs to do to fill those in to give you an awesome result. And when it's done, what it delivers is a stitched ping sequence, which will appear inside of your content. Here it comes. It's rendering the result now. Good time to take a sip. You might think, why do it in front of you? Because I want you to see how it works. All right, here it goes. 5 more frames, and all right. And you'll see that we've got a new fill layer that was just generated, our 119 frames, right there. Now, you might be thinking, there's the car, there's our mask. There it is, Content-Aware filled out. Now, I'm the first to say, does it always get it perfectly every time? No. I'm a realist. Ask yourself, how long does that take manually? How long did it take now? You also have the ability to come in here and then further fill other areas, just like you do with Content-Aware Fill on images, right? So if it gets you most of the way there, how long would it take you to do this on 119 frames manually? I doubt 30 seconds. Maybe if you're very, very fast. All right? You just have to try it. It is pretty darn shocking. All right. So here's another example. I'm going to show you quickly some of the cool things that this sort of, this particular one does. So here we have this very beautiful background. This actually looks like a, you'd think that that was like a fake background plate. No, this is actually somewhere, a beautiful place in Ireland, where we actually have a woman here standing on these rocks. Now, for this particular one, I mentioned, any tool, any masking tool that you can use to poke the hole will suffice. So for this, you can see that we actually have a roto brush mask applied, okay? Really nice roto. Because this would have been too hard to draw, and then the tracker, again, this is where you bring in your friends who do roto, all right? Now, the thing with this one is, because she never moves, think about the way Content-Aware Fill is in Photoshop. If it can't see ever, like in that last example, the car was moving and the camera's moving, so it could see the road before and after. So again, via our amazing AI, ML technologies, it understands and can interpolate what those pixels should be. Here, we never reveal what's behind her. So it was giving me a kind of weird result. It was putting some of the sky down where the mountain should be. Some of these rocks here in the foreground were kind of appearing behind her. It just wasn't working. It wasn't doing it right. So what did we need to do? Well, we have the ability, after you mask it, to then create what's called a reference frame. And the reference frame allows you to take this masked area, create reference frame. It launches Photoshop. And now in Photoshop, you can use Photoshop tools to fill in that hole. and then it will use that as the reference to fill in the background. All right? So I'm going to do this real quickly, and again, I'll probably use some content-aware tools myself here. So I'm going to do this in about 3 sections. So we'll start with this. Thing is it function F5? No, not that one. I'm so bad with keyboard shortcuts. It's shift function F5. Yes. OK, content-aware fill. All right, there's one. OK. And again, you see how Photoshop even, it's like, I don't know, maybe. That's OK, we can fix it. Oh, hold on. Like this. OK, 2. And come in one more time here. Shift function F5. OK. All right, and that's pretty good, but you can see some of the rocks are kind of weird, so I would typically come over here. I'll use the clone stamp tool and just kind of paint in some of the rocks. All right. Now you might say, oh, you just duplicated that one. Well, remember, that's OK. No one's even going to pay attention to that. You get the idea. I'm finessing this in Photoshop. I'm now going to save this. And when I do that, I can close it as well. Back to After Effects. Now what you can see is that we have a new reference frame created here. Now this one takes a little bit longer to process, so in the essence of time, I'm not going to do it for you, but I'll turn that back on, turn on the fill, and now again, this was the final result, okay? So anything you can do, and you can have multiple fills, multiple reference frames from Photoshop. Sometimes the beginning and the end. Oh, sorry, I left one out at the end there. You can see I had another fill in there. Sometimes you need to do multiple frames. So you can send those to Photoshop, repair them, and then it will use that as the basis for the fill. Unbelievably powerful. All right, one more thing I'm going to show you in here. This leverages the edge blend method. So here we have a motorcycle driving through, looks almost kind of like Las Vegas. Very sunny. You've got some light flare, sun flare happening here, lens flare. And we're covering up a decal on the metal here. Now, the difference in these methods, edge blend is going to analyze the content, and this is really ideal if you're doing something like removing logos from a laptop, right, where there's flat color, right, like removing, the apple on this flat dark gray or whatever it is, flat color, and then it uses those flat colors to blend the edges, right? So when you create the mask, create the whole, it's not trying to find content, it's trying to find like-colored pixels. So once again, we created our mask. This one I'll do in front of you because it's nice and quick. All right. Here's our tracked mask, nothing fancy. And this one's a little challenging because, let's face it, right? It's moving, the light is changing. Okay. So I'm going to set the alpha expansion. Let's go to around 3. I think that'll do it. Let's generate our fill layer. It analyzes. It's doing it. It's rendering now. 35 of 103 frames. Here we go. And, all right, voila. Pretty sweet, okay? There's so many things that you can show in here, it's just ridiculous. We got to move on. Okay, Audition. Last thing I'm going to show you here. So we have a new feature in Audition called Punch and Roll. Anyone who works with DAWs, anyone who works with ADR is very familiar with this. It's the ability to start doing a voiceover, and then you mess up the take. So you want to start exactly where you were. You want to punch in, and then keep rolling. And then if you mess up, same thing. You want to stop, punch in, keep rolling. But you need some kind of a counter. You need something to let you know that the punch is coming. You need to be able to hear what you just said. You were able to punch in an Audition before, but it wasn't elegant. It wasn't easy to figure it out. Now we've made it very elegant and easy with a new punch and roll function. So down here on the record button, if you right-click, you'll see that we have a new punch and roll mode. Let's zoom back out here. And if I go into my video preferences, here's where you'll see under playback and recording that we have a punch and roll pre-roll counter, and then we can also display this little light flash to show you what's happening. So I'm going to go ahead and start recording here, and I'll start narrating. When you're young, you don't think about goals. Because every day, your goal is just getting... OK, I messed that up. So I'm going to wind back right there, and I'm going to go into punch and roll. You'll see the countdown timer in the video panel. You'll hear me, and then it'll kick in. Don't think about goals. Because every day, just waking up, going to school, being a good person, this is your goal. It matters not. Nope, it's supposed to be it doesn't matter. Right there, punch and roll. This is your goal. It matters not what you do, but how you do it. Okay? You get the idea. If you do multiple takes in the same place, you have the ability to select your specific takes. Then to create your comp, because we don't want, this is creating multiple files. We don't want that. I want it to be one comped file. And I also don't want to have to bounce this to a new file. I can simply say, merge those takes, and it does it for me. So now we have one consistent take done very quickly. This can all be controlled by keyboard shortcuts, by the way. So you can punch again to ensure that it's always on the same frame in the same place. Of course, you've got other video display options here. So if we wanted to actually see our time code, you can see that. This can, of course, be resized and changed on screen, or you can change the position depending upon how you like it to be. So many cool things. We've also got ambience, auto ducking, and Audition. So many new additions. There's so much more to show you, but unfortunately, my friends, I am out of time. So this is day one. We've got incredible presentations. We've got a special thing happening here at the booth at 3:30 today. I can't tell you what. You will want to be back here. This is the place to be. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great rest of day one at NAB. We'll see you next time. Thank you.